Hi, welcome to the VIP Home Podcast. I'm Dana from vipHomeLink. Today we have Andrea from the NFPA. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, Dana. Thank you so much for having me today. So my name is Andrea Vastis. I am the Senior Director of Public Education for the National Fire Protection Association. Our mission is to eliminate the loss of life and property from fire, electrical, and related hazards. We are a 126-year-old organization working with stakeholders across a myriad of trades, fire service, building and life safety, policymakers, working to keep people and property safe. And I have the pleasure of working with a team that does all things education, including hanging out with our favorite Sparky the fire dog.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you, Andrea. So we had the pleasure of having you on a previous podcast, which is so nice. So thank you for coming back. And we discussed then a number of cooking safety tips. And today we're actually going to focus on kitchen safety itself. So what do homeowners need to know when choosing electrical cooking equipment like slow cookers, skillets, what else do we have that people set on their counters, toaster ovens, all of the above?
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's important because we have to think about kitchen safety for a variety of reasons, because cooking is still the number one cause of home fires and home fire injuries. The majority of those are on the range top, and the majority of those are actually on electric range tops. So there are a number of things that we need to think about in terms of how we're cooking on our stovetop and the considerations we take. And then, of course, we need to consider things like all the electrical appliances and are we using them safely to make sure we can reduce the risk of fire and burns.
So when you're using the gadgets, do you need to put something underneath them? Slow cookers, underneath it gets really hot. And I know there's, like a little bit of space underneath that, but then you'll see people just, in conversation about, you should see what happened to my countertop. It's cracking. Can it catch fire? Are there certain products that are better to put underneath, or, where to place them?
So, I think that the key here is it depends on the product, right? And so first and foremost, you want to make sure that the products you choose are listed by a qualified testing laboratory. You want to make sure that what you have is an appropriate approved product. You want to make sure that it is properly plugged into the wall. So with any kind of an appliance, you don't want to be using an extension cord. You always want to plug them directly into the wall because, again, you want to make sure that you're getting the proper electrical current. And then you need to follow your manufacturer's instructions for what you have. Your typical slow cooker is actually fine for pretty much most countertops. And that's where you need to think about, if I have a laminate countertop, should I be using some other kind of like a granite base or a marble base, something that doesn't conduct heat,
right?
And doesn't have the risk of melting. But most products are safe for most countertops.
So what are some of the tips for homeowners to stay safe while using this equipment? And you talked about looking at the manufacturer's guide and following the instructions, an extension cord, which personally I didn't even think of. I don't have any extension cords running in my kitchen, but you don't know what other people's houses look like, where their outlets are placed, or where they're lacking of.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's something. Any temperature limiting controls that people should be using?
So there's a couple of things here. So one is, and I want to get back to in terms of where you're putting these, you never want to put them, for instance, on a towel, right? Because these appliances do get hot. Right. And so if you think about things that can burn, paper, towels, fabrics, right? You want those away from the appliances where they are getting hot. So, it's interesting because electric range tops do have temperature limiting controls that if newer ones manufactured after 2015 have to have some temperature limiting controls. And if you have an old coil stovetop that was manufactured before that, you can actually retrofit with a burner that is temperature limiting. So that's important to understand. And then you need to look at the appliances. Are you using the right temperature? Because if you have a slow cooker and the recipe calls for it to be on low and you're putting it on high, you're risking burning the food. You're risking now creating the potential for something that can happen. And again, it's also about contact burns, right? Remember, these things are hot. And so it's not just about a fire, it's about how you are handling these appliances as well, making sure that you are using, oven mitts, keeping them away from things that can burn.
Mm-hmm. Is there a certain amount of time that you need to wait for something to cool off before you go ahead and clean it? Or is it just across the board?
It's across the board, depending on what it is, whether you're using your electric pot, your, Instant Pot, your crock pot, your coffee maker. Everything has a different cooling temperature. But I think the key here is always assume that it's hot when you're approaching it, right?
Right.
And never let your children or pets within 3 feet of these things. They can pull something down on top of them. They can knock into it.
So we all love a microwave. Yes. It is super easy, great invention, helps us warm up food pretty fast, but they can also be really dangerous. So what are the most important safety tips for using a microwave?
So there are some key things for a microwave. Obviously, no metal in the microwave at all. It will spark, it will catch fire. It is not meant for metal. Again, making sure that even the containers that you're using, whether it's a mug, a glass, is microwave safe. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't say microwave safe on the bottom of the plate or the mug, do not take the chance to put it in, because it can crack, it can break, it can get incredibly hot. We do talk a lot about microwaves, especially because there are teens and, kids who are home and they're microwaving whatever it is, right? Their mac and cheese, their soups, and so you need to treat it like the word oven. And so you need to make sure you have your oven mitts. Certainly, and remember, microwaves heat up from the inside out. So the center of it will always be very hot, which is why, and again, there's fires and there's burns. These are the things that happen in the kitchen that are hazards. And so the one absolute never also is never microwave baby formula, because it heats the liquid from the inside out. You might test it and you're only getting the outside of the liquid and you have no idea how hot it really is on the inside.
Right. No, that's good to know. That's why they have those warmers, or you can have water at room temperature even.
Exactly. I think one of the things that people don't think about with a lot of their appliances, and again, things like their cooktops, is proper cleaning. When there is leftover food, when there is residual, whether it's in the microwave, on the stovetop, in a crock pot, those are things that if there's leftover grease, oil, any kind of spills, they can heat up and they can catch fire. And so those are the kinds of things that's important as well for your microwave, is making sure the inside of it is clean, because debris, leftover, oils, butters, things like that, they can actually catch fire and overheat.
That's good to know. That's, when you're microwaving popcorn, we know those kernels get super hot, and what happens,
Yes.
When do you know enough is enough? When you stop hearing the popping, or?
Yes. Follow the instructions, right? Don't wait to see what happens. Don't push it. Always follow the instructions.
Right. You take it out and you have a piping hot, potential fire in your hands.
Exactly. Right. And I think the key is that you can, right? If there is a burning point for some things in the microwave. And, that's actually one of the other pieces. Double check the time that you set something for. Think about everything on microwave is on a timer. Double check. Did you do 3 minutes or 30 minutes?
30 seconds.
Or 30 seconds, and stay in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That is the other, the number one cause within the cause of cooking fires is unattended cooking. I left something going. I left the water overflowing and boiling. I left my pan for just a minute.
Right. The just a minute is what gets people in trouble most
Exactly.
often. So burns are one of the most frequent injuries in the kitchen that you had just mentioned. What are some of the best ways to prevent scaldings, burns, using oven mitts? Are we, what are those things? What does that look like?
Yeah. I think use the tools that are there for you, right? Things like the oven mitts. There are actually, and I think we have this weird tendency to always want to stick our face into things, right?
Whether we want to sell it.
Right? And so I'm opening the oven because I want to check the oven. And we just instinctively, we have to be really careful about things like that because steam, again, can burn.
Right.
And so opening the oven where the heat and the steam, opening the microwave oven, opening that bag of popcorn, the number one burn injury for children, especially under the age of 5, are scalds and burns from things like hot foods and liquids. And so this is now not just about the cooking of it, but the transporting it and serving of it to the table. And this is why we really stress the 3-foot, no kid, no pet. All right, the 3-foot zone, keep the pets away, keep the kids away. No, coffee in one hand, kid in another. Just take your time.
Right. No, that's definitely important. So we never want to think of worst case scenarios, but what happens if a pan catches fire? Or, if you think it's okay and you purchase it and it is okay, what can cause those fires and why would that happen?
Well, so there's a number of reasons why, when we're talking about a pan on the stove again, and we're saying things like, grease and oil, they heat up very quickly, can catch fire very quickly. We have a couple of things that we like to say. Number one, stand by your pan, right? You always stay with your frying, your poaching, your braising. And it's great to have a heavy lid or a cookie sheet nearby, because that minute that flare up starts, you can quickly douse it. And generally you can slide that lid right over the pan, turn off the heat and step away and just don't touch it. The same thing if you end up with a fire in your oven, as shut the door, turn off the oven, call the fire department. Microwave oven, same thing. Shut the door, turn it off, unplug it. This is not, these are the immediate things to do. If it at any point starts to get bigger where you can slide a pan over it, it's not your job to fight the fire. There are people for that, and they're called the firefighters, and you call 911 and you let them come do it, and you get everyone out of the house.
Yeah. So in cleaning the oven, so there's, that self-clean button or latch to do that. Do you recommend people leave their oven as is? Do you recommend trying to clean it out and wipe it down a little bit first? And also open the window when you're doing a self-clean. It gives off a very strong odor that can make people, get headaches or whatnot. So what is the best recommendation there?
The best recommendation is to follow the manufacturer's instructions. And, because there are so many types of ovens, different, how old the oven is. Number one, if you had cooked something and something spilled the last time, you absolutely want to get that nice and clean. You're going to be cooking a big dinner, and this is why we also talk about the times of the year where there are the most cooking fires, right? Thanksgiving, You have, all these dishes going in the oven. Maybe you didn't clean the oven beforehand and there's all this leftover stuff that's now overheating and, is just very easily ignitable. And so, how my oven is, 6 years old. Do I still have the booklet? Probably not. But guess what? I know what make and model it is, and I can just very easily find it online. And I think that's the beauty of it, right? And honestly, be willing to part with your appliances if the cord is starting to fray, right? If there is something, today it's working, tomorrow it's not working, today it's working. It's done. It's time to move it on. And I think those are the important things to recognize is, follow the instructions. And if something's wrong with it, if it's an appliance, it's time to move it on and get a new one. If it's something like your range top, your oven, you might want to get it serviced by a qualified professional, right. Or it might be just time for a new one.
Couldn't agree with you more.
An upgrade. Time for an upgrade.
Somebody, when there's a kitchen fire, let's say,
yes,
and it gets on your clothing.
Yes.
What do you do? What do you do?
Know it. Stop, drop, roll. I mean, it's about smothering the flames, right? And so this is why it's important that when you are doing the cooking, you're not wearing any loose clothing. You're either wearing short sleeves or tight sleeves. You're not wearing anything that's billowy that can, touch the range and catch fire. If your an article of clothing catches fire, you can smother it quickly. If it is, bigger on you, that's it. I mean, stop, drop, and roll really does matter. And it's interesting because kids don't, it doesn't happen as often with kids. It is more likely to happen to someone who's older, right? Who is moving a little more slowly. And an older person can get down, stop, and roll. Or if there's another person there, they can smother it with a blanket, right? It's about smothering, getting rid of any oxygen for that fire to be able to take hold and continue the burn.
Right. Okay, well, if there's anything we haven't discussed yet that you feel our members should know in the kitchen while being safe, please let us know. Any last final thoughts?
Final thoughts, pay attention, I think is the key. We are such a distracted society. We are so busy multitasking. This is what it boils down to. Pay attention to, the outlet, pay attention to whether something's on, off, high, low. Don't leave the kitchen when you are cooking. You never want to leave it alone. And, if you are home after a night out and you've had a few drinks or whatever, get takeout.
Order the pizza ahead of time.
Honestly, I mean, I think that's the key is, right? It doesn't even matter if you're using the microwave or whatever. If you are using medication that makes you sleepy, if you've had a few drinks, right? That's not the time to be cooking, using electrical equipment and cooking, right? That's the time to, reach in and grab a salad out of the refrigerator or order takeout.
A salad.
Well, or something more fun.
I love it. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to having you many more times on the VIP Home podcast. And it was a pleasure as always.
Dana, thank you very much. And I really appreciate this. I'll just say, if you want to learn a little bit more about cooking safety, nfpa.org/cooking. And if you want something for your kids to do, that's, this is my plug. It's ad-free, it's safe, it is vetted, an awesome way for kids to learn and have fun, sparky.org. They can play games and learn about fire safety at the same time.
Love it. Thank you so much again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Appreciate it.